Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Things We Know. Hi, Kari.
Hello, Lisa. It's fun to see you again.
As always, yeah, we're gonna have a couple of weeks off now because of surgeries and such. So it'll be weird to not talk to you every Thursday.
I know. Well, we'll talk.
Oh, we will talk. I
We
just
just
mean
won't be
being
on
on
Zoom
Zoom. Yeah,
together.
yeah. Well, I love this topic today because actually it was brought to my attention, I guess, for lack of a better word, by my friend and client, Leanne. I thought it was a fun topic. She was here visiting with me last week, and we were talking kind of specifically about my surgery. But then she texted me on Sunday and was like, what? Maybe there's something around starting over. She's at a place in her life right now where a business she was in is kind of going south quickly. I'm about to get a new hip. You and I have both changed jobs, moved, had kids, had loss, and every time there's a bit of starting over with when you get through that process. And her point was when we have a loss of some sort, we tend to think of it negatively, and it's really a positive because it's just the next step on our destiny. And so I thought this would be a cool topic. We've already talked about commencement. We talked last week to Chrissy around Lady Shark and the opportunities that she looks for on a daily basis. So this just almost seems like the third part of a trifecta.
Yeah, I love it. I do. I agree. It applies to so many of our peers and our clients. And I think about just the topics I've been talking about this week, like divorce, losing or leaving a job, like whether you didn't want to lose a job and you did, or you leave one, it's still a huge moment in your life. It's still difficult in many ways. Obviously, it's difficult to lose a job.
Yeah.
They leave one is hard too. And
Yep.
then also life after loss, like people who are, you know, kind of and I think a lot of this, and we'll get into it probably, is like about identity. Like I
Mm,
myself in this marriage, I knew myself in this job, I knew who I was when I was caring for this person or sharing life with this person, or so who am I if those aspects of my life aren't there anymore, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge piece of it for sure. And because it can be attached to your identity, it can be jarring, it can be traumatic. And you might go down a path of thinking, well, it's just a job, it's just a this, it's just a that. Why am I being so affected by this? And I guess first off, have your feelings about it, and then maybe try to turn it around and look at it as an opportunity for growth.
Yeah. Yeah. True. Um, we jotted down some ideas here that we just kind of want to riff on. And so this is really just going to be a back and forth about this because I think there's so many, you're right, there's so many opportunities here. And as with anything, we're broken records about this. It's not all about just jumping in and doing it and starting over.
Yeah.
That goes well, and you can see something as an opportunity if you give yourself the opportunity to like name what you're feeling and feel what
Hmm.
you're feeling and take the time you need to feel it. And then, define what it is for you. Like, what does starting over mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think, if it would be unrealistic to think of the minute you have a loss of some sort or a change of some sort that you just automatically turn to, well, this is an opportunity. That would be sort of the spiritually bypassing your feelings piece of it,
Exactly.
right? I
Exactly.
mean, no, there's loss brings grief, whether it's the loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a human,
Yeah.
it there there is grief around that for sure.
You just made me think of something. I'm in my family a little bit famous for like saying, like suggesting those things too soon, like
Oh yeah.
it was interesting because right before we hit record, I was telling you how something's not working out for Peter's summer. And it's interesting, between his third and fourth year of high school, that happened too. He broke his foot the day the school year was over, he was doing a flip on the trampoline and landed on it badly. And he was doing a flip because he had gotten such a high GPA that he
Oh
was
no.
thrilled. And looking forward to this amazing summer at age 17, right before senior year, and then broke his foot, needed surgery, could not do that job, could not drive, like really. And with his foot propped up on ice, I don't know if surgery, I don't even think surgery had happened yet, and I took guitar and said, well, I mean, on the upside, you're gonna have a lot of time to play guitar and study for your SATs. And I walked away, and apparently just tears came.
Oh no.
It was way too soon to say that. No, I'm not trying to say I didn't like. I'm not the like. Of course, I took him to X-rays. Like I was feeling so bad for him, and so. But I said that way too soon in the game. Like
Yeah,
he
yeah, yeah.
was all. It was all just setting in for him, and so
Yeah.
that's funny. Just reminded me of that, because that's also like when things don't go the way you want, sometimes that's an impetus for having to start a new path or start something.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. No, I think, no, that's funny. Yeah. But again, and again, this was a conversation you and I were having on a different topic. As a parent, you want to go in and fix, right? So it's easy. But for me, that was one of the things I definitely learned in my coaching when I was training to become a coach, is the idea of just being like mirroring back. Yep, that blows. You
It blows.
know, that
Exactly.
blows. You
I've had
know.
with 3 boys and lots of life, I've had a lot of opportunities to do that better now.
Yeah, good. Okay, so defining starting over. Um, I it is it a complete reset? I mean, there's something around, and I think I told the story early in the pod around people who would come into Weight Watchers and they'd gain a little bit of weight and they'd say, "Well, I'm starting over," or maybe they hadn't been there for 2 or 3 weeks and you come back in, "Well, I'm starting over." And I'm like, "Are you, or are you just drawing a line in the sand, doing a reset?" Because it's not like you gained all your weight back. You're not really starting over.
And you're going
You're
to build on what you learned, right?
exactly, exactly. So it I think depending on the situation and depending on the person, starting over isn't exactly the right terminology. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're right. And it makes me think of so many people when we worked together who were trying something new in their career
Yeah.
and really feeling like brand new at it, and like
Yeah.
just feeling like they kept thinking, well, I can't charge money yet, I don't know what I'm doing. And it was always incumbent upon us. And Alan, our really wonderful coach friend, said it so beautifully, too, which is, you're not newborns. Like, like you came
Right.
into this with so much other experience. Some of you are nurses, some of you are therapists, some of you were teachers. um Even if you're like just out of college, like you have your life experience. So starting over isn't being a newborn, it is trying something new and bringing all of your wisdom and experience with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, to your point exactly. I mean, there were so many, and that alone, I mean, is so brave to have a career and to decide, okay, I'm going to try something new that feels more purposeful. And I mean, that was one of the things I still do because I still work with entrepreneurs. Um, that is very empowering and brave to like have a career, have a paycheck, and feel like there's something else I'm supposed to be doing that's more purposeful for me, that feels more purposeful. But along with that kind of change comes the fear and the critter brain and the saboteur and all those sort of things. And so and I'm sure you did this too, and Alan as well, all the coaches that we worked with, it was reminding them that, let's say for instance, if they had been a teacher and now they're becoming a coach, the first day they were a teacher, they didn't think they had it all together either. And yet they took day by day, step by step, and to a point where now they felt done with that part of their journey and they were jumping into another part. And every time I would remind somebody that you didn't feel great when you started the last job, you were probably scared and thought you weren't worthy and all the things you're saying now about being a coach. And it was like you could feel the tension just escape from their body when they had that sort of reminder.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
You again, and it's that identity thing. The other piece about it was, when people are really and naturally human, caught up in like, how do I explain this? Everyone knew me as an accountant or everyone
Right.
as, a lawyer or this, like, what are they going to say? And how do I explain that I'm trying something new with like, no net, no benefits?
Yeah.
I don't know, something like that. That identity piece brings up all the fear. And
Yeah.
so then they start to think of themselves as like crazy. What am I doing?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the worst is when they would have somebody in their life kind of reflect that back to them. And inevitably I'd always say to them, that is literally like the human embodiment of your critter brain. This human is saying all the things that your brain is already saying. And so you want to believe them the way you want to believe your critter brain. And they just want the best for you. They're just trying to keep you safe. But yeah, I always was fascinated by those experiences that my students, clients, whatever, were having, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, starting over really is just a decision to try something new or, um, by choice. And sometimes it's not by choice, by
Yeah,
choice. Like you get this, sometimes life just happens.
yeah,
And I do think, gosh, like when I think of moving, my sister-in-law, they've moved so many times and like had to start over with all new people and then watch their kids do it at the same time too. You did that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, twice.
and that's a choice, but it's not the choice for the kids. And
Oh yeah.
like you're experiencing them in the same house. We chose it, you didn't, and we're all going through what's hard about this. I think that's interesting.
Oh yeah, that was an interesting time of life when we moved from Chicago to LA. I mean, it was Darren and I's second move. We had moved from Dayton to Chicago and Chicago to LA. But for the kids, they grew up in Chicago. It was, high school and middle school for them. And it wasn't their choice at all. They loved LA on spring break. But the idea, and I let them have their feelings and they, processed for as long as they needed to process. And now, anybody that is friends with me on social media knows that they're thriving,
Yep.
so they
Yeah.
took that, but even at that young age, they weren't so resilient that they bounced right into LA like, here I am, guys, like
Yeah.
they had to they had to set aside their fear and their trepidation and their anger at Darren and I for moving and
Mm,
again, take it one day at a time. And now they both love it here and love what they've created in their lives, you
yeah.
know.
So it is like it's whether it was your choice or not, there is the grieving that something's over or that
Yeah.
something's gone or that something was taken away. So there's like the validation of the feelings for that. And like, do those feelings exist because it was so great or because there was,
Mm,
like to really kind of look at that, like what am I taking from it? What can I keep with me? What am I letting go of? And then there's the fear of the unknown.
yeah.
And we just don't know yet how great it's going to be. So it's all like this weird in between place of like, I think of Leanne, like such a spiritual, grounded way of being like, this is opening up something new for me and I don't know what it is yet. And I'm not saying this isn't painful, but I'm choosing to like, wouldn't that be great if everyone could do that in that moment?
Well, and I will put a link into her YouTube because that's one of the things she's starting with is a YouTube channel to sort of share her message and how she wants to show up in the world and how she wants to support other people show up in the world. Um, I can't remember off the top of my head, or I'd say it right now, but we'll have it in the link for the show notes. I and she's done a lot of work. She's done a lot of work around this. You and I have done a lot of work. So we may fare faster, easier than others, but that's when I think as you're going through a change, a loss, if you can find a support system, whether it is hiring a therapist, a coach, if you have friends, I tend to feel like most people keep that kind of those kind of feelings about change to themselves and they try to sort of work through it on their own. And I don't think that is I think they'd be much better off having a team of people helping them and supporting them. Thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Like I was trying to imagine where someone is starting over and they don't have access to a team or support, and how difficult that must be. Because in those settings, like where we were working with people who were trying something new and starting something new, they had invested
Yep.
in education and support with coaches, right?
Yep.
And that wasn't enough. We were constantly like, who in your life is
Yep.
also supporting you? Who can you talk to for accountability, even if it's just another one of these students, right? Who can you
Yep.
get? Like, you can't take us home with you. Who's at home with you that's supporting this and cheering you on? And if not, like, where can you get that outside the home? And then there was like, okay, so you're creating something new in your life. Who have you told?
Yeah.
It makes such a difference. Like, otherwise you're just this is all kind of happening in your mind.
Yeah. And it can get real effed up there.
Right. Right. So like, how, I don't know, how does that work? So I think it's very hard to create something new in a vacuum, to start something new, to get a fresh start. It really, you need validation, you need support, you need love, you need accountability, just say, like, if I think about your Weight Watchers people, for example, it's so much easier to make a fresh start and a commitment with yourself if you get at least one person who you can be like supportive with and accountable with,
Yeah.
somebody you can like actually exercise with is great, or someone you can, go kind of like commit to a cleaner eating type of lifestyle, right? In that example, I think that's true anywhere. Like if I'm trying to quit smoking, or if I'm trying to quit, overspending, I'm not going to call my friends who smoke and shop, right? Like
Right.
that kind of thing. So I'm just trying to like, think about how do you do that on your own?
Well, and to use Weight Watchers as a continue that example, that was one of the things that I felt was a huge loss. I mean, I was relatively impressed that they took meetings online when COVID happened. The problem is they didn't take them offline when it stopped, when COVID was over. And so the actual meeting in person is very few and far between. I have a lot of friends that are, still have their toe dipped in the program, and they miss it because there was something about being in a room of 30 people who you didn't have to explain to them, that you felt bad because you ate french fries. Everybody understood it. So that community aspect was really important. And, if you had a good meeting, you saw the same people week after week. And so if you didn't show up, they might reach out to you themselves. It wasn't me doing the reach
Uh,
out. Sometimes it was, but and that feeling like you were part of something greater was really helpful in reaching your goals.
I love that. You
But
just
it's
made
gone
me
now.
think of something that I wasn't planning on bringing. What'd you say?
I said,
Sorry.
but it's gone now. It's all on Zoom, and they miss it.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, the company we were together, at again, going away from in-person meetups definitely takes away some of that ability to like have momentum in what you're doing, right? Because showing up somewhere in person, I mean, think about people who come to our retreats, showing up
Yeah.
for yourself really commits to this new start, commits to this new, I mean, obviously calling it best chapter yet too, but like really committing, and ensuring that it goes well for you as you're stepping into something new, I think happens so much more when you're in person with people who can, lay eyes on you, wrap arms around you, and
And then
be.
if you have to have the Zoom part of it or the virtual part, right? So I don't know if this is what you were starting to say, but we did not plan on this being anything about the retreat. And yet
Yeah,
that's exactly, I mean, that's kind of where we're at right now, right? The best
right.
chapter yet retreat in January, the one that's coming up in October. The beautiful piece is in those 2 to 3 days, these women got a new community. And they got to talk about what their next chapter was, and everybody was there for it. And
Yeah.
now, for the retreat that happened in January, we still have a WhatsApp thread, and they're still going in and sharing their successes and sharing their struggles. And everybody comes in and goes, huzzah, or you got this, or la la la.
It's
And we'll
true.
do that
It's
again
true.
after with the October one. So I mean,
Yeah.
once you've had that in-person connection, then the virtual piece is like a nice benefit on afterwards. But that's a big piece of why we always wanted to do retreats.
Yeah, that type of starting over of like committing to getting unstuck or doing things differently or stepping into a new version of you really can nothing is creates more success than getting witnessed, right?
Yes.
Getting
Yes.
witnessed.
Yep.
There's other types of starting over that we might have time to get into, which is like starting a new job or a new relationship and those kind of things, but or you know moving and stuff, but like there might be a different version of getting witnessed. What I was gonna say, actually, when you were talking about the being in person thing, I didn't expect it. Like you just made me think of a conversation I had the other night with my brother-in-law's parents. They were in town from the East Coast, and they, like my mom, they as a couple moved into a retirement community, and I was like, "What's that like? And how is that?" Because I have other people I know and love who are really resisting that.
Yep.
And I have a lot of knowledge about it because my sister works in that field, and I see all the like I hear all the stories and I see all the wonderful I see all the wonderful things about it. Like for my mom, this is a what an incredible story. Like we helped herself. Well, I shouldn't say we at all. I had very little to do with it. My brother was the realtor, and my sister really helped her move. I was here doing a lot with Griffin, but we all had, as different moments. We were down there helping her pack up because that was a
Yep.
home 50 years. But really so proud of her because she's in a retirement community, which PS we're old enough to live in.
I know. So sad.
And she is making friends who like want to travel with her. She's having dinner parties. She is, growing a garden there. She even considered, as like going by a different version of her name, which was
That's
super cute. Um, like just talk about starting over in her 80s
yeah. Yeah.
and creating a new life for herself and breathing new life into the years that she's stepping into. Like I am so proud of her. And then
Yeah.
having a house that's all hers. She went from her parents' house to her husband's, and
Mm.
this is her first only her house, and she's doing everything she wants with it. And I am like so delighted for her and so impressed. And then I was talking to my brother-in-law's parents, and they're like, it is great. We barely have time to play Scrabble anymore. We are the ambassadors for new guests. We go, we do the happy hours, we do the walk. What's that?
I'm just thinking, like, maybe when Charlotte graduates college, that's where Darren and I go next because it sounds super fun.
Right? Like there's like happy hours, there's exercise, there's gossip, I mean, it's just like everything. It's so fun. I was asking them questions. I've seen them come to graduations and sacraments and things like that. And I swear I haven't had a chance to even see if Julie and Dave agree, but I think they look more vibrant and younger than ever. Like I just think it's fantastic. And like that takes such courage when you're
Yeah.
living your life a certain way for so long in your later chapters to be like, let's make new friends, let's do new things, and
Well,
let's
and it's interesting because I think the resistance often comes from, I want to stay in my home. And that's the thing about change. You talked about the in between. I don't mind change. I don't like the unknown. So, and I think that can be, but you have to sort of stretch yourself outside of your comfort zone and see, and then who knows what the opportunities are. But you won't know if you just keep banging your head against the wall and saying, I'm not going, I want to stay in my home, and I'm not.
Yeah, and
You
I
know,
like the thing that so far is in common with some of these things, not all of them, is being in person with other
yeah,
people helps because you find out you're not alone in that fear. You find
yeah.
out that, there's connection to be had. And I don't know, something about the identity piece maybe feels a little warmer when you're being like witnessed by people. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's something there. I mean, obviously my mom loves decorating her house, but I think the part that's bringing her so much life is the other people she's meeting who are in
Yeah.
the same stage of life.
Yeah. You've said, we've said identity a few times, that when you say identity, the thing that makes me think about identity, and this wasn't exactly starting over per se, but when you talk about loss, I remember when I lost my mom after having lost my dad, I had a real moment of my identity as I didn't have parents anymore. And so I remember saying to someone, I don't remember who it was. Um, Actually, I think somebody said that I said this to someone and they had the same experience. And again, so talking to other people helps. I was like, who's going to be proud of me? Yeah, Darren's proud of me, the kids are proud of me, but it's different when a parent's proud of you. Who am I going to call when the podcast launches? All these things that like my parents would have, and my mom in particular would have really, really loved. And just saying that out loud, which was super sad to admit, to have so many other people who had lost both their parents be like, oh yeah, no, that's real, and you'll get through it. But I mean, even at a loss, even when somebody you love dies, you've lost that identity as their friend, as their kid, as their partner, whatever it might, their sibling, whatever it might be. Um and it's something to be reckoned with for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That just made me choke up thinking about that.
Gotten over it.
Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, I do think, yeah, this becomes such an identity piece. I love how this is like what we thought we were going to talk about and how it turns into other things. But it is, I mean, life is constant change.
Yeah.
It's constant change. And so in a sense, we're always being invited to start over or recreate ourselves or step into a new version of ourselves, right?
Yeah.
And that this whole opportunity thing, like seeing anything as an opportunity to seize is such a healthy way of going through life, and like really just remembering everything's temporary. And if it's hard to move on, maybe it's because it was so wonderful. And then
Yeah.
what what is this making more room for? What is something I could move towards right now?
Yeah.
In the case of moving, or I'm trying to think of the things like that happen that you really didn't want, right? Like a job gets taken away from you, a business partner, and
Yeah.
involves things like, again, what is what needs to happen for you to start over? And I think you're right. It is like, feel the feelings, kind of name the opportunities, and then check like what do you want? Like it's such a great
Yeah.
opportunity to like, well, I wasn't planning on this, but now that I'm here, what can I do? I mean, I think about like Charlotte really sounded like it was an opportunity for her to, okay, this is who I am now. And these, like, now I really get to think about the kind of friends I make, and do I want to still do Irish dancing and all that? Like there was just all these new things for her, right? That
Yeah.
got to look at where she might not have questioned those, and just kept growing up in Chicago a different way. I don't know. I'm
Oh
just,
no, I think absolutely. If we'd stayed in Chicago, Charlotte would still be Irish dancing, acting. I mean, it's interesting because I say acting wasn't on the radar. That's not really true because she acted in a bazillion of Liam's movies when they were little, and she was really good at it, and she was really good at improv. But it just wasn't on There's no acting. I mean, there probably is acting schools, but like that just wasn't a thing we were looking at. And
right.
so getting here and getting into acting, and then leaving, dance. But then she got to bring that back in when she was in cabaret. And so it's also then once you've, and this goes back to what we were saying already, once you step into the new opportunity, recognizing how you get to bring your past skills into this. So if we're talking about moving, if we're talking about new relationships, if we're talking about jobs, you know, the past experience doesn't dissolve just because it doesn't exist anymore. You're bringing that learning, if it's a relationship, what went well, what do you want to see more of the next time? The next time you're in a relationship, what do you want to see different? Same with jobs. As you're looking for a new role, what did you love about your job? What didn't you love? I think that, the thing that Leanne brought up, and I think I said this at the beginning, is we often look at a change or a loss or having to start over as um, sad. And in the moment it might be, but it's also the next part of your journey. And depending on how you believe, it's destiny. Whatever you aren't doing anymore or isn't happening for you anymore was supposed to end for whatever reason. Doesn't make it easier. Doesn't make does Again, I don't want you to just go, check that off. I'm moving on to the next thing. But if you can go through the grief of whatever the loss is, and then open yourself up to, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And assume that everything is going to work out in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not in the way you thought, but that it will work out.
Yeah. I like that. I also think in so many opportunities as coaches and friends, right? Or even to each other, we can often, again, this is where having like somebody to
Yeah.
connect with or talk to about it. Um, but you know, a friend or some another coworker also losing the job, or you know,
Yep.
whatever it is, like having sometimes you know, people will ask, like, I would love to have an evaluation before I leave, or informal, like, tell me what I contributed here. But if you can't have those in a formal setting, oftentimes someone can reflect back to you, like what they're seeing in you, like the resilience
Mhm.
you didn't know you had, the opportunity to, you know, communicate really well and learn like what it is you do want, right? And like
Yeah.
so it's this, I don't know, I think that some of my greater self-awareness moments and like the ability to see the gifts I had came in moments that I didn't want to happen, right? But then
Yeah.
it was like, oh, wow, thanks for pointing that out to me. I did handle that well. Or
Yeah.
you're right, I didn't react in a way that, like, maybe I'm not as upset about this as I thought I would have been. You're right, my reaction isn't as tragic as I would have imagined it to be. So
But if
maybe,
you're not talking to people about this and it's not
right,
being reflected back to you, that's a hot mess up in our brains. Doesn't,
right,
it doesn't matter how involved you are. Our brain is meant to keep us safe. And so, and if you don't have somebody to talk to, write it out, get it out of your brain and down on paper so that you can let it go.
yeah,
Because if it just sits in there rolling around, you have no one to tell you you're doing a great job.
yeah.
Because you're not going to tell yourself that for the most part.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like some people we admire, you know, out in the world who like the thing they're famous for happened because they lost, you know, the ability to do something else, right? Like
Right.
somebody picked up the guitar when they were fired from their job, or you know, like things like that. And so I think, yeah, it really is such a great opportunity to say, like, I would have never gotten to know this part of myself or cultivated this part of myself had I not been forced. Just like Peter learning to get really good at guitar with a broken foot, right?
Right.
He would have been running all around that summer, and he's so good.
Yeah.
He also did end up writing really great college application essays about that whole experience. So, you
So
know,
you weren't wrong.
I wasn't wrong. Said it all too soon.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, I guess if you are the person that somebody's coming to, and that is your automatic, "Well, everything will be fine, you'll be fine." Maybe breathe before you say that, and just reflect that, "Yes, this is a bummer that this happened, and I'm so sorry that this happened," whatever it might be. Again, job loss, relationship loss, moving across the country, whatever it might be. Try to hold back from just jumping to everything's going to be fine. Everything will be fine, but that's not what they need at that moment. They need to just be witnessed, as you said. They just need and if you don't know what to say, just say, I don't know what to say. This sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, and I think also, again, don't rush this. Like you get to
Yeah.
just sit there and say that sucks. You get to agree with them, take your cues from that person.
Yep.
And then a way to support them when they're ready is to say, or to ask, like, what are you taking from that that's good?
Yeah.
What are you taking
And
with you
celebrate.
that's good? Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like what's like in a breakup that one of my kids went through, there was a expression of gratitude to me. It's like, remember when I was done with that therapist, and you said, well, have one more and let them know what you learned. And he
Mm.
came away from that going, oh my gosh, mom, that was so great. We just really appreciated each other. And that, you know,
Mm.
that was so great. And so it's like, we were breaking up and we had that conversation and just said, like, I want to just tell you a couple of things that I appreciate about, you know, our friendship. And if you wanted to share that back, and they did. And it was like such
Oh,
a conversation. And I thought, oh, that's good. Like, when you're like have a loss or you're moving on, it's so good to stop and just say, okay, here's even, even if it was a terrible relationship in some cases, right? Like, what's good about it? Maybe you learned something about yourself, or maybe you learned, I know I want to be treated better.
Yeah.
Or when it was good, these were the things I liked about it. Whatever it is, it's kind of fun to, pack your bag with the good things you want to take forward and be very conscientious of the shit you don't want to take forward with you, and really like feel freer and lighter.
I love that story. That is fantastic. And I do think, uh, mm, mm, I don't know about Liam, but for sure Charlotte has sort of taken my lead around that. And I took the lead from my parents of like breaking up and not hating each other, and in Charlotte's breakups, it's like, okay, well, I got this, I learned that. And I think it helps if you have the opportunity. Now, you're not always going to have the opportunity to have this. So even if it's just a self-reflection of what did I get, what was great about that, it's an easy, I think it's easier to start over when you can acknowledge what was good about the past.
Mm.
If you're not holding on to all the baggage of the things that weren't good. Um, I think it's lighter. You don't have all the baggage. You're walking out with a purse instead of some kind
Yeah.
of huge piece of luggage.
It's interesting because if everything's constantly changing, then like when you go to start over, how committed are you to a new thing, right?
Right.
But I don't know. I feel like as we've gotten older, and maybe it's just the work I've done, I kind of feel like try anything, right? Like,
Yeah.
not be, I don't mean that like as flaky as that could sound to some, but I really think like, well, I'm going to try something new. And if it doesn't work, it's not going to mean anything about me. It's just maybe not what I, want to do. I remember being very self-critical if I didn't see something through, until somebody reframed for me, like, you got out of it what you needed to get out of it to go to your next thing. And like, all next things aren't the thing. They're,
Right.
you try until you find the next real thing.
Yes.
So it is like an opportunity to just try things, fail at them, and don't see them as failures, but see them as feedback until you get to the thing that feels like, oh, this is where I want to land for a while. And I think that's what I know about now. Like, I don't think time is, promised to me, but I do feel like I could try just about anything I want. If I can afford it, if I have the time for it, right? All those things. But I feel like I can try everything I want and not feel like it has to be, I don't know, it has to be like my next big career or my next, big skill or talent, or I don't know. I mean, we're
No, I
trying,
think,
right? This is a new chapter. Starting a
yeah.
podcast was a new chapter. And it's like,
Yep.
we didn't know what it was. We were like, this could just be us gabbing, which it is.
Yeah.
But how fun, right? Like,
Yeah.
and look what it's opened up. We were like, let's try retreats. How fun this has been. This is so great. We could have tried something that, didn't pan out.
I mean, we did. We offered a 6-month group program and that went over like a lead balloon.
That's true.
And that was fine. But again, we walked away and realized, okay, that wasn't what they wanted.
Yeah.
That was the offer at the last retreat. Like, okay, we thought they wanted the connect, they were loving the connection. So that's what we had planned to offer. And then we took a step back and realized all they kept asking for all weekend was when's the next retreat. And
That's
so
true.
now we've changed our mind and we realize, neither one of us. Can you imagine if either one of us was trying to run that 6-month group
I
program right
mean,
now?
and on the one hand, we would do it because we do it.
We would, but
And we still have our clients, but I really believe we also pitched it soft because we didn't want to do it.
I think you're exactly right. I don't think we knew that, but yes.
Yeah.
And now we know, okay, at each retreat, we're going to know when the next retreat is because that's what everybody's really jonesing for, which I love. I think of it as like the in-between boyfriend, right? Like you break up
Right.
with the deep love and you have a couple of the boyfriends and you think, oh,
Yeah.
maybe this is the one. And then they're really just the in-between person until you find the next person.
Yeah.
And it will all unfold as it unfolds. But I think you're right. I mean, getting back up on the horse,
Yeah.
right? It's just whatever the next thing and allow it to be what it is. It might be temporary, it might be the next big permanent thing. We don't know. And that's okay. It's not failure. It's the next thing you tried.
I feel like if I were to try to string together everything that we've talked about here, because we've gone into so many different examples, which I love, is go towards community.
Yes, I agree. Yeah,
It's
ultimately.
find community, even if you're a community of two.
Yep.
Starting over, whether it's with a coach or a friend or a lover or whatever it is, like a new neighborhood, a new city, a new living situation, whatever it is, like couple up, like pair up and find even more friends together. But I think that feels like the through line here, like, or just figure out who's going to support whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I mean, I will say with both of Darren and I's moves, we didn't do it in a vacuum. When we moved to Chicago, we had a handful of friends already in Chicago. We moved across the street from another couple. So we right out of the gate had friends there. And then when we moved here to LA, we had even more friends because we had all these people that moved from Chicago, and we have two friends from Dayton that
Yeah.
live out here, So that certainly for us made it substantially easier. The kids didn't have that, but the kids are younger and they were easier. It was easier for them to make new friends. But for
You
Darren
guys,
and I,
they had family,
they
right?
had family. Exactly.
So,
You're right. You're right. Yeah.
and it's not like some of those changes aren't leaving community. It's just more like whatever it is you're trying, wherever it is you're going, the sooner you can, get some other type of human support or connection there, the more you're going to enjoy it, even if it is just a stopover.
And right. And I'll throw in one more little thing before we move to our song, because you and I talked about this before we started recording, because I was having this conversation with another one of my clients. She happened to mention Easter holiday or Easter homily she heard. It was the sixth Sunday of Easter last week. And again, we're recording this way earlier. And so I listened to it, and it was really fascinating because it was all about beginning again. And it was so funny because she presented it. It was Sherry Turner, who we've had on as a guest, and she presented it as, I listened to this homily and it made me think of something you and Kari would talk about. It's about beginning again. I'm like, that's so weird because that's exactly what we're talking about tomorrow. So I went and listened to it, and it was really, really lovely. But the big takeaway that I got from it was, as you get older, you also have to, and I'm not even sure, he was putting it as you get older, but I think really this is true of at any time of your life. You have to define what success or winning means in each of your stages of life, right? So as we get older, he said in there, scientifically speaking, the part of our brain that innovates decreases, but the part of the brain that gets wise, it integrates everything we've ever done and carries that forward, increases. And so it's not looking to say, okay, at 55, 60, I mean, Sherry did create something brand new in her 60s, so she's perhaps an anomaly, but it's not about creating something brand new and innovating. It's taking all of your wisdom and like molding that into the next new thing. That's what this pod is. The reason we started this is because we were thinking about all the conversations we've already been having, and we thought, well, let's bring other people into this and have that reflected and have them talking about it. And that's the kind of feedback we get all the time from our listeners is, it made me think about this, and I told my friend about that, and share the pod and all that jazz.
The best is not behind you.
The best is not behind you. So
Yes.
recognizing with each stage of life, winning, succeeding is going to look different. It's not going to look the same in your 50s as it looked in your 20s, and that is okay. So I think community and recognizing what success looks like can ease any transition. And once you get over the feeling of loss and whatever grief and feelings are entailed with that, it will make it easier to step forward into, dare I say, your best chapter yet.
Beautiful.
I love cross promoting.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on that?
Well, I know we were like, I feel like we could parse this out into so many and we might have more about this because it is so real for our listeners. So many chapters with kids graduating, as we talked about already, with, like becoming empty nesters, maybe, downsizing into smaller homes and moving into communities, and like at any age in your 50s and 60s and 70s, making new friends, leaving jobs, starting businesses, all these things, right? And then having just going through that humbling time of our, dare I say it, aging brains and like learning new things, right?
Yeah.
And that just that humbling, but also kind of exhilarating thing of, wow, I feel like a freshman again. Like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whether it's a job or not, like I feel new again at this. And
Mm.
I think it's just however you approach it. It's a beautiful thing. Like life is so cyclical,
Yeah.
and I don't know. Everything you just said is making me think. It's still springy here in Portland, and we still have
Yes.
some beautiful blossoms on the trees. And I'm just always marveling at like how like rooted these trees are, but like how they go through these seasons, and like
Mm.
and just they have their different stages of beauty every year, and then they shed stuff and they start over. But like the roots are still there, and that's what that's
Mm.
making me think of. It's just how beautiful that is. That's us. We can be rooted
Yep.
and go through seasons and create new beauty and new life and new energy.
Are those beautiful flowers behind you from your trees?
Well, they're from my garden. Yeah.
Oh, from your garden. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're gorgeous. And they match your top. For those of you who are not watching on YouTube, you might want to go peek this out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the song, actually, it's funny. You just said a song, and I said something. I thought, ooh, we should have probably maybe done 4 seasons in one day from
Oh,
Crowded House. But we picked a little known band called the Beatles. And the song Here Comes the Sun. And it also works. So I'm picking some lyrics from in between. And it says, Little darling, I feel that ice is slowly melting. Little darling, it seems like years since it's been clear, but here comes the sun. Here comes the sun. And I say, it's all right. And there was some do's in there, but I didn't feel like saying that. So, I mean, that is every day is a new day. Every day the sun comes up and every night it goes down.
opportunity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with opportunity. Absolutely. And the letting go at night as you fall asleep and letting go of what doesn't serve you and stepping into what does.
Well, good luck to everyone on your new chapters and your new beginnings. And we'd love to hear. So if you are following the pod, you can always send us a message on the Things We Know podcast 23@gmail.com. We respond to those. You can also comment on any of the beautiful posts that Lisa shares on our social media. We would love to hear and cheer you on and know how you're stepping into something new or starting over. And we're your community if you
I
don't
was
have
going to say, we always have your back.
Yes.
I love it. Well, as always, thanks so much for listening, and we will be back next week. Bye, everyone.